Let's get it on.
All right, Top Billin, your boy has had several people take umbrage with the post-game dissection comment that I said, where I believe that Tennessee was Georgia's best opponent this season and not Ohio State. Now listen, people are prisoners of the moment. They just saw Ohio State give Georgia a damn good game. There's no doubt about that. But Ohio State lost. And in the fashion that it lost really gives me pause on this, right? I'm talking about giving up like 540 yards and 42 points. What you do on offense is great. I just know that Georgia's offense is usually the best offense on the field, and I felt the same way about that. So they're going to come with the excuses or reasonings or whatever about the personnel. I don't care about that. Everybody has bad personnel or personnel missing later on in the season. It is what it is on that front. If you step on that field, there should be no excuses. Ohio State is a great team. They had a great season, loaded on the offensive side of the ball, does not play good line of scrimmage football, in my opinion. Tennessee, you can make an argument that before the Tennessee game, people were afraid on the Georgia side. I know because I covered Georgia. Right? They were afraid of losing to Tennessee. You can say this and that now. I know people in a group chat that I have was very quiet about Tennessee the entire season, and a lot of them was like, oh, this happened in the Missouri game and this and that. Tennessee is probably going to beat Georgia. I did not feel that way because styles make fights. I felt that Georgia could beat Tennessee, as great as Tennessee is, just because of the line of scrimmage and being able to combat that with certain schemes with the type of speed that it has on the back end and the open field tackling. Tennessee's offense, to its credit, right, space, right, pace and space, but it's a simplified offense. Ohio State's a little bit different with their offensive scheme, pro style schemes and all that right there. I felt like that could give Georgia a problem, but ultimately, if it became a shootout or something like that, I have mad confidence in Georgia against Ohio State. Same thing with Tennessee, but if we're talking about Tennessee versus Ohio State, I think Tennessee would beat Ohio State. Now, in saying that, that doesn't mean that I think Ohio State sucks, right? Well, I don't understand why people have to go to the extreme like Vanilla Ice, right? I'm not saying Ohio State sucks. Did you forget Tennessee was the number one team in the country? Headed into that game, there was a great amount of people who thought that Tennessee could beat Georgia. Matter of fact, let's look at some stuff right here. Now, let's go back and look at the totality of Ohio State's schedule. Who is Ohio State's best win? Or which team is Ohio State's best win? Me, I'm going to selfishly say it's my Penn State Nittany Lions. They beat Penn State. Right, it was a pretty good game. It was a pretty good game. You know what I'm saying? They beat Penn State, and I think the world of this particular Penn State team. Only lost to Michigan and Ohio State. I think it was balling as hard as towards the end at the end of the year too. I think if Penn State got some of these teams, even in the playoffs, it could beat some of these playoff teams. Styles make fights. Penn State, line of scrimmage, sound team. Penn State gets after it on defense. Penn State lacked proper quarterback play to go to the next level, in my opinion. Right, run game off the chain, best running back duo in the country. Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, we get it in. But I'm unbiased. I will forever be unbiased when I'm behind this microphone. I do not give a shit about Penn State or any team or any fandom when I'm giving analysis. But I think Penn State's the best win. Followed by Notre Dame. Notre Dame, a 4-loss team, and it has some really bad losses, and it has some decent wins. But that's it. Penn State, good team, right? Very good team. And Notre Dame, a pretty good team. It did not beat Michigan. That's the best win. Let's go through it right here. Notre Dame, Arkansas State, Toledo, Wisconsin, Rutgers, Michigan State, Iowa, Penn State, right? We are. Northwestern, Indiana, Maryland. That was a good game. Maryland was giving them all they got, right? They were real. Them Turks was getting after it, baby, on the offensive side of the ball. If you think about this. All the big-time teams that can play offense, Ohio State had trouble with, giving up 30 points at least. the best offensive teams, right? Notre Dame to me ain't that good of an offensive team. Notre Dame has some good defense. I don't know. Notre Dame's a pretty solid team, so I'm not going to say that. I will give them a little bit of credit for Notre Dame. Maryland has a good offense. They gave up 30 points against Maryland. Michigan has a good offense, 45 against Michigan. Georgia, 42 points given up. Penn State, 31 points given up. So you're going to give up 30 at the very least to teams who can play some offense. Let's look at Tennessee. Now, Tennessee, what's the best win on Tennessee's schedule? Definitely Alabama. You can make a case straight up, right? If you know football, Alabama could possibly have been the runner-up or something like that. I don't think Alabama beat Georgia in either. Alabama, I can make Georgia didn't play Alabama, so if Alabama was on Georgia's schedule, I would say that it would be a toss-up between Alabama and Tennessee as to who would be best on Georgia's schedule. However, Alabama is a mother. So think about that. To me, Alabama will still be the second or third best team in the country. It beat Alabama. It also beat, who was the other? LSU, right? The LSU team we saw put up 30 against Georgia. Of course, LSU has some good wins. The Big Ten West champion, LSU beat Alabama as well. Right? In the bowl game, they got the Clemson win and everything. So, man, I don't know what to tell you. They have the better wins to me. And look at this. Wait. I buried the lead here. In saying that, this is what I think, or this particular aspect to me separates Tennessee from Ohio State in a one-game scenario. Now, obviously, they gave up 49 points to Alabama. A lot of people are going to give up 49 points to Alabama. Alabama is that good. But you think about in the LSU, right? We saw LSU put up 30 on Georgia, right? It could be certain circumstances you could say is why that happened. But, hey, the results are the results. It only put up 13 points against Tennessee. Only 13 points. And some of Tennessee's biggest games, its defense showed up, and specifically in the line of scrimmage as well. Same deal right here. Going into that Kentucky game, people were pretty high on Kentucky, right? I didn't think much of Kentucky, but a lot of people were high on them. People like the quarterback and all this and that. And they were thinking their offense could do something against Tennessee because they thought Tennessee's defense was not that good. Kentucky scored 6 points. I forget, was it 2 field goals or maybe a touchdown and didn't miss? I forget how, but only 6 points, 44-6 in that Kentucky game. And then the Georgia game. Georgia put up 27 against Tennessee. They won comfortably, right? Tennessee scored at the end. They had a chance for another explosive play, maybe could have cut it to 7, but Georgia won that game handily. A lot of people are going to point to the weather as a reason why Georgia didn't score more points, but that goes both ways, right? The weather impacts Tennessee as well. So you could have said Tennessee probably could have scored more points, but the results are the results. 27 points there. And then in that bowl game against Clemson, 14 points given up. They both 11-2. I think Tennessee plays more sound line of scrimmage football, especially on defense. Both teams, I think the run games can be pretty equal. But listen, when we're talking about this, aren't we talking about the teams as they were presently constructed? You can do that both ways there. They played a healthy-ass Tennessee team, right, or a Tennessee that had all those guys there, the Jalen Hyatts, your Cedric Tillmans, right, and the running backs there, the Hendon Hooker, of course, Hendon Hooker. So at the very least, if you want to say that you're still overrating Tennessee's defense, I still don't think Ohio State's defense is that good at all. And if you're saying that, then it would be a shootout, right? Anything can happen in a shootout, but if we're talking about just a straight-up shootout, I'm still taking Tennessee. If we forget this, listen, even with the Hendon Hooker not playing the last couple of games or whatever like that, they still finished number 1 in the country in total offense. Tennessee's super explosive, and they get off a ton of plays, 945 plays in 13 games. Georgia has 1,049, so 100 more plays, but they played 2 more games. So look how many plays Tennessee is getting off. They got a different brand of football. Ohio State, a little bit slowed down. 876 in 13 games for Ohio State. compared to 945 right there. Look at the touchdowns, man. 78 touchdowns for Tennessee. Ohio State, 72 in the same amount of games. Look at the yardage. 490 for Ohio State, 525. And I would say that you have to say Tennessee played the harder schedule. You know what? I'll retract that. Let's just say the schedule difficulty was even. It doesn't matter. If even they're leaving, I'm taking Tennessee. I'm not saying Tennessee would destroy Ohio State by any stretch of the imagination. It'd be a great game. It would be more than likely a shootout where I feel like Tennessee would make a couple of stops to go ahead and get by an Ohio State. So people are going to go by the fact that they just saw Ohio State almost pull it off against Georgia. But going into that game, nobody thought Ohio State was going to beat Georgia. So you're going to be extremely impressed by somebody doing much better, exceeding expectations than you would against the team in Tennessee that a lot of people thought that they could beat Georgia. All right, I don't do that. I take a look. I step back, take a 500-foot view or whatever like that. Look at it in a vacuum, and I'm thinking like, yeah. If you go back and look at that game, right, there was certain instances where you could say, oh man, if Tennessee would have hit this right here, like this right here. Ohio State can catch Georgia in instances like this. You get that fabricated pressure with Smile Monday in here. They're still running that 2-deep man under, but this time they catch a slot receiver on safety, Chris Smith. That would be Jalen Hyatt right here running this fade, and he gets the better of Chris Smith on this. Chris Smith can't turn and run with them, and that's not Chris Smith's job. Chris Smith, or that's not what he excels at. He excels at everything as far as space goes, tackling, covering at depth. He can be your post safety usually, and he can work a serious amount of range, but getting him in man coverage, he's matched up like in a Mecca Ibuka or something like that. Yeah, it could be curtains. And I'm not so sure C.J. Stroud misses something like this, right? Even though Hendon Hooker did great all year as well. Oh, look at that. Chris Smith was torched. This is a torching right here. If he hits this right here, you never know what could go on in the game right there. But Hendon Hooker slightly misses it right there. Not so sure. Stroud to Ibuka misses. At the very least, maybe Ibuka goes up and makes the catch, even if he doesn't score. All right, so they had several instances like that where they could have made it a much more palatable score. But I think, hey, holding that team to 27 points and being within a couple of possessions, it is what it is. Look, I forgot. I completely buried this as well. So people going to be like, well, Murph, what about Tennessee's loss to South Carolina? Listen, I understand college football. After covering it now for, since 7 years or something like that professionally, these kids always look ahead. I remember going into that, right? The talk was that all Tennessee had to do was win out the next couple of games, and they would pretty much all be assured that they would be in the college football playoff without even having to play in the SEC championship game. You know damn well they were looking at that South Carolina game. They probably took those cats super lightly. That was a bad loss. I like South Carolina's offensive personnel, though, so they could definitely exploit some stuff. But that was a pretty bad loss. But, hey, on the flip side of that, you saw what Michigan did to Ohio State, and styles make fights. Although Michigan did that to Ohio State, Michigan lost to a team that got his ass straight up worked, right? Got that prison loving 65-7. So there's a lot of different ways you can look at this. I want you to put on your thinking caps, at least for the people who are neutral, right? It's hard to find neutral people on the internet or people who are unbiased, so they try to give some analysis. Who would win straight up between Tennessee and Ohio State? This season's Tennessee and Ohio State. And people need to stop coming here talking about what's going to go on in the future and everything. It don't work that way. College football, every year is its own entity. This won't be the same team for Ohio State next year as same thing with Tennessee. Hendon Hooker gone, C.J. Stroud gone, several other players gone from both teams there. So can't beat them this year, it don't count. You got people up here talking about some, this and that with Georgia and this. I said Georgia was unbeatable. Georgia went through its season undefeated. Only team that could have beat Georgia was Georgia. If they played a bad game, Georgia went undefeated. So you can talk about a close loss and all this and that. It won. I don't know how else to explain that, but let me know. Put on your thinking caps. Tennessee versus Ohio State. That would have been a great game to see. But I definitely want to know what you guys think as far as the analysis on that. And give me some analysis as to why you think this. And don't just be all that go Vols shit and all this bullshit. Go Bucks and all that. All right. It's your boy, Mid-Atlantic Murph, making you think again. No disrespect to Ohio State, not at all. Right? They are the kings of my team's conference, the Big Ten division. I will always respect Ohio State. I just believe that Tennessee was the best team that Georgia faced this year, right? Despite the fact of it closely losing. I had some dumbass up here was talking shit, right? He was talking about he made money off of the Georgia fans and all this, talking about he was betting the spread or something like that. I'm like, man, be a man. Won't you bet straight up like a man, pansy? They're talking about a spread. You up there talking about your team barely lost and all this. You ain't win, bro. Why it don't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. The great Vin Diesel once said, right? The great orator Vin Diesel once said. All right. Salute.
What more can I say?
Top Billin.